In 2010, Robert Pattinson was the most hated man on earth. Well, not him exactly. The character he played, Edward Cullen, the sparkly vampire who made teenage girls scream and grown men roll their eyes. He was the face of a franchise that made over $3 billion. He was on every magazine cover. He couldn't walk down the street without being mobbed, and he absolutely despised every second of it. He called his own performance terrible. He said the movies make no sense. He admitted he hated being famous. He said the attention made him feel like a zoo animal. He was one of the biggest stars on the planet, and he wanted to disappear. But here's the strange part. Something changed. He didn't fade away. He didn't have a breakdown. He didn't become a cautionary tale. He just stopped caring. And in the process, he became one of the most respected actors of his generation. Here's the question nobody is asking. How does a man who hated fame so much end up winning the game on his own terms? In 2012, Robert Pattinson sat down for an interview with a journalist. The journalist asked him what it felt like to be one of the most famous people on the planet. Pattinson didn't give a PR-friendly answer. He said, "I don't understand why anyone would want to be famous. It's the worst thing in the world." He called his life claustrophobic. He said he couldn't leave his house without being followed. He described the paparazzi as vultures. He was in his early 20s. He had more money than most people would see in a lifetime. He could have anything he wanted, and he was miserable. Here's what he said about the Twilight movies themselves. "I was just playing a character that didn't make sense to me, and I still don't really get it." He called the films absurd. He said he hated his performance. He admitted he didn't understand the appeal. Now think about that for a second. He was the star of one of the biggest franchises in movie history. He had millions of fans screaming his name. To understand why Robert Pattinson hated fame so much, you have to go back to where he started. He was born in London in 1986. He grew up in Barnes, a quiet suburb. His father was a car dealer. His mother worked at a modeling agency. He was a shy kid, awkward. He didn't fit in. He was bullied at school because he was different. He discovered acting as a teenager, not because he wanted to be famous, because he wanted to escape. He was good at it, really good. He got into the Barnes Theater Company. He started getting small roles. Then at 18, he was cast in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire as Cedric Diggory. It was a supporting role, a few scenes, but it put him on the radar, and then came Twilight. He auditioned for the role of Edward Cullen. The studio wanted someone who looked like a Greek god. Pattinson thought he had no chance. He got the part, and his life changed forever. He went from being a quiet kid from London to one of the most recognizable faces on earth overnight, and he was completely unprepared for it. Here's what Robert Pattinson discovered about fame that nobody had warned him about. It's not just the attention, it's the loss of self. When you're famous, people stop seeing you as a person. They see you as a character, a symbol, a projection. For millions of teenage girls, Robert Pattinson wasn't a real person. He was Edward Cullen, the brooding, romantic vampire they had fallen in love with. And they expected him to be that person in real life. He wasn't. He was awkward, funny, self-deprecating. He made jokes about his own movies. He didn't act like a heartthrob, and people were disappointed. One journalist wrote that meeting Pattinson was confusing because he didn't match the image they had of him. He wasn't dreamy enough. He wasn't mysterious enough. He was just a guy, and Pattinson felt that disappointment. He felt like he was letting people down, not by doing anything wrong, just by being himself. He said, "I think I'm not very good at being a celebrity. I'm always trying to escape." And escape was exactly what he wanted to do. But here's what makes Pattinson different from so many other stars. He didn't disappear. He didn't have a public breakdown. He didn't give up. Instead, he made a choice. He decided to stop caring about what people expected of him. He started taking roles that were the opposite of Edward Cullen. He did small independent films, weird films, dark films, films that nobody was going to see, Cosmopolis, The Rover, Maps to the Stars, Good Time, High Life. These weren't blockbusters. They weren't fan-friendly. They were challenging, uncomfortable, and strange, and Pattinson was brilliant in them. In Good Time, he played a small-time criminal desperately trying to save his brother. The performance was raw, intense, and completely unlike anything he had done before. The New York Times called it mesmerizing. The Guardian called it a revelation. And suddenly the world stopped seeing him as the sparkly vampire. They started seeing him as a real actor. He didn't need to be famous anymore. He didn't need to be adored. He just wanted to do the work. He told a journalist, "I don't give a shit anymore. I just want to make interesting movies." And that's when everything changed. So how did Robert Pattinson stop caring? It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't bitterness. It was acceptance. He realized that fame is a game. And the only way to win the game is to stop playing it. He stopped reading reviews. He stopped worrying about what people thought. He stopped trying to be the person the world wanted him to be. He said, I don't think about it anymore. I just focus on the work. And the work got better. Then came the Batman. When Pattinson was cast as the new Batman, the internet exploded. People hated the idea. They thought he was wrong for the role. Pattinson didn't care. He took the role anyway. He built a new Batman, dark, brooding, emotionally damaged, and it worked. That instinct never went away. Mickey 17, Die My Love, the drama, The Odyssey, 4 films in 2 years. And barely 2 of them look like they belong to the same actor. In Mickey 17, Bong Joon-ho's sci-fi satire, Pattinson played a disposable space colonist reprinted after every death. 2 versions of the same man played in 2 completely different registers and about as far from Edward Cullen as an actor can get. Critics called it proof of his range, some of the funniest and strangest work of his career. Then came Die My Love opposite Jennifer Lawrence in Lynn Ramsey's unflinching drama about a young mother's descent into postpartum depression. Premiered at Cannes to a 9-minute standing ovation. The kind of reaction that has nothing to do with sparkly vampires and everything to do with an actor audiences now trust to go somewhere uncomfortable. A few months later, he was back on screen with Zendaya in the drama. A 2-force dark comedy about a wedding that quietly falls apart in the week leading up to it. Made for $28 million, it pulled in more than $120 million worldwide. Proof that the strange, difficult choices weren't just earning respect anymore. They were earning audiences too. Then, in the summer of 2026, he stepped into Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, one of the biggest blockbusters on the planet, and a part kept secret until release. Different scales, different genres, same underlying choice, work that interests him, not work built to be loved. He never went looking for approval again, he just kept working. Here's the question I want to leave you with. Robert Pattinson had everything the world tells us to want: fame, fortune, global recognition, a fan base that worshipped him, and he hated it. He called it the worst thing in the world. He said it made him feel like a zoo animal. He couldn't leave his house, and then something shifted. He stopped trying to be the person the world wanted him to be. He stopped chasing approval. He stopped caring about being the heartthrob or the icon. He just did the work he loved. And in the process, he became something even better than a celebrity. He became a great actor. Robert Pattinson's story isn't about fame. It's about the moment you stop caring about what everyone else thinks and start living on your own terms. He hated being famous. And that's exactly why he survived it, because he never let fame define him. He always knew who he was underneath it. And when the cameras finally turned away, he was still standing. If this changed how you see fame, celebrity, and the price of success, subscribe to Ech-hoo, because fame fades, but the truth always echoes.